Hey, it's William Christopher Ford, and welcome to this installment of 52 Masters. Today, we are at the Shuyokan Dojo in Costa Mesa. We're going to be training with Sensei David Dye. That being said, let's get to training. I am 51 years old. I've been a practitioner of Okinawan Shorin-ryu karate since I was 7. There was some who would call me a master. I assure you, I am not. I believe that the true expert is someone who still has a student's heart and a beginner's mind. This year, to celebrate turning 52, I'm setting out to learn from 52 other disciplines, each from its own master. Some things I've tried before, others I'm a first-day beginner like anyone else. 52 weeks, 52 new skills. I'm William Christopher Ford, and this is 52 Masters.
Sensei Dye! Ich, ni, san, shi, go, rok, sich, hach. Ich, ni, san, shi, go, rok, sich, hach. Grabbing both wrists. Your left foot's forward, right foot's back. Hands come this way. This is Kotegaishi reversed from a Ruth Crosser's grab. Here. Lock this up. 90 degrees. Step in and around. Cup the chin. Chisei Maru. Small circle down. Knock the hand down. Vertical punch. Now grab the chin. Step back to your left foot, take him down. Step around, grab the neck, take him down. Step around, grab the chin, step back, take him down. Back up, have a seat. In traditional Aikido, we're doing Aikido technique, the right foot is forward because the samurai sword was on the left side, protecting the weapon. Because of my law enforcement background, my weapon was my gun. So I never exposed my sword to my partner. So we do everything with the left foot forward, right foot back. So if this is 12 o'clock, I'm stepping off at about 2. So she punches, deflect. Okay? This way I can see this hand. I mean, if it comes over the top, I've got clear to do this. If it comes underneath, I drop the hand down. So, 1, 2, 3. We use a vertical punch versus flat punch because it's more strong, aligned with the wrist. Traditional karate, this way. Parry, grab, step through. Get up on them so they're on their side. This knee protects her from rolling back towards me, so when I drop this punch, I'm doing a knee strike here. And when I punch here, I'm doing a knee strike here. Push this down. Load this fist up. Drive it down. Here. Here. Now, you'll see me do this. The reason I hit the shoulder is recoil. 2 punches. The reason I do that is because I can't build up the speed. I want recoil. I hit this. Newton's law. For every reaction, there's an opposite equal reaction. Okay, now he's going to throw that punch with that left hand. Take your left hand, intercept it. Left hand. Right over the top. Okay, little finger. Lock the wrist up. Okay, lock the wrist up in the Kotegashi. Step through the right foot and take it down. Punch. Yeah. Okay, push it over. Punch and grab. And kotegashi. Yeah! Punch it over. Okay, back up and have a seat, please. So this is deflect here. Now I don't want to use I use the term block, but I want you to understand we're not blocking something, we are deflecting it. So we're deflecting this, and this hand here now comes here to grab. Kotegashi, little finger above the bend of the wrist. You have to bend the wrist this way. Now, what's going to happen is we're not going to give her the chance to do that. Right?
Yeah.
So what's going to happen is, as you deflect, see where my right hand is? So before she throws that punch, kotegashi. It's the left side of kotegashi. 1, 2. 1, 2.
Sensei, I do have a question regarding your footwork. When you do the initial deflection, where is your body and your feet? Where are your feet going?
So I do deflection here. Now he's going to throw here. Step through the right foot.
Step through. Hey.
We want the right side of the body working all. If I do this, I'm losing power. You get your power from your hips. So if you step through with the right foot, you get all your power.
Hey.
Plus, I'm set up to do a forward roll on the right side. If I do this, I do a forward roll, everything's going to collapse. Okay, okay, here we go. Traditional Aikido, the thumb's on the back knuckle of the ring finger. It's okay, however, your thumb is out of line with the bone on your arm. So what I like to do is to move the thumb over here in line with the arm. It gives a tighter grip. Plus, if I'm going to use this technique on the street, it's designed to hit the wrist, destroy it. So if I put my thumb here, I'm going to hit my own thumb. If I bring this over here, there's the pressure. So this is stronger. What? Okay, now if you look down where your right foot is, it should be at the apex of the triangle where his feet are. Okay, now the right hand is going to come up underneath the arm. You're going to step back with the left foot and throw towards the back of the dojo. As a martial artist, you're held in a higher level of responsibility than a person who's not ever had any martial arts training. Okay? The goal in self-defense is to stop the attack. And once it's stopped, that's where it ends. If you continue to beat up this person when they're on the ground, everybody's got phones now, they're videotaping, you are no longer the victim, he is. So once you stop the attack, that's where it ends.
We are back here after the training. Oftentimes my favorite part of each episode of 52 Masters. Once again, Sensei David Dye, thank you so much. Sensei Dye was kind enough to have us in today and enjoyed the class very much. Students were really, really great and nobody hurt me and some really, really, really cool stuff.
Good.
Your first instructor really was your dad, right?
Yes. In high school, well, prior to high school, he taught me how to box.
Okay.
And then when I got into high school, I got picked on because of my red hair.
Okay.
So he enrolled me in a Judo dojo in Inglewood, California.
Okay.
That's where I got my first introduction to martial arts. And so I was training in Judo, and it was also a karate dojo there too. But I would, after school, I would go to the dojo and I would clean the dojo. That's the way I paid for my dues. And I would get instruction, and then I would also help my instructor in demonstrations and stuff like that.
Who was your instructor?
Sensei Treese.
The first formal martial art I studied was Judo. So what happened after that?
Well, after I graduated from high school. I was actively involved in judo. I moved to Orange County. And I hooked up with my second judo instructor, Sensei Earl Robbins, who was from Ohio. And he conducted his classes, ironically enough, at Costa Mesa High School in the wrestling room, which is where both my kids went to high school, and also Demura Sensei held his tournaments.
Okay.
So I trained with him and competed. And then he moved, and I ended up connecting with my third judo instructor, Sensei Shaw, who was with the Orange County District Attorney's Office, and we trained up in the city of Tustin.
Okay.
And it was at that time I started getting involved in karate. I started training with Sensei Fumio Demura in his dojo in Santa Ana.
Okay.
And then one of my students in the boys club that I was teaching judo became one of my karate instructors. He was a student of Sensei Demura. And then in 1978, I got involved in Aikido. I was introduced to Aikido, though, when I became a police officer by a gentleman by the name of Sensei Ernie Hai,
Okay.
who was a Westminster police officer. And then in 1978, I got introduced to Aikido, and I started training in Aikido. But I reached a point in my life where I was training in all three arts, and I had to make a decision on which way I wanted to go. And I went to my judo instructor, Sensei Shaw, and I asked him for advice. He says, well, when you compete defensively, and Aikido's defensively, and you have an opportunity for teaching, go with the Aikido. Mm-hmm. So I still stayed actively involved in karate, training and competing in tournaments and stuff like that. But I started training in Aikido in 78, and then in 1980, I opened my dojo here. Actually, in 1985 here. In 1980, we were doing the Parks and Recreation Department. And started working a lot in Aikido. I got introduced to the Yoshinkan Aikido because it was the only type of Aikido that was taught to the Tokyo Riot Police.
Right.
And being a police officer, I felt that would be a good opportunity for me to present that to our department. And I did a series of training tapes in the 90s on Yoshinkan Aikido for law enforcement. And my chief of police at that time, Dave Snowden, was a martial artist. And he allowed me to participate in that training tapes using Costa Mesa PD uniform and also the police units. So we did that, and they did quite well. A lot of people. I did a lot of training.
Interesting. I mentioned to you earlier that well, first of all, Yoshinkan Aikido is considered a harder style of Aikido, maybe closer to the Aikijutsu.
Yeah. There were 7 students that originally started training with the founder, Morihei Ueshiba, and one of those 7 students was Gozo Shioda.
Okay.
I met Sensei Gozo Shioda in 1980 in California. It was his only visit that he did up here. It was in Whittier, and I got a chance to interview him. I then met him again in 1990 in Canada, and that was where I got promoted to 3rd degree. I got my Shodan through my instructor I was training with at the time, and my Nidan, and then I got my Sandan with Gozo. But the Yoshinkan Aikido, he kept it more in line with the combative side of it. It's not something that looks pretty. And a lot of the other people that trained with the founder took their training that they got from him and created their own system, like Tomiki style, which is the only competitive style of Aikido that actually competed in the Olympics in 1976. And then you have Aikikai and Yoshinkan and stuff like that. So they basically focus on different aspects of the training of Aikido. And Yoshinkan is more of a, I don't want to say hard style, but more, I guess you could say it's hard style.
What was Shioda Sensei like?
He was very short. I think he came up to my shoulder here, and he was very approachable. He liked to teach, and he was very powerful. In 1990, his son Yasuhisa Shioda came to our dojo and presented us with our dojo certificate because we joined the International Yoshinkan Aikido Federation, and we were, I believe, the second dojo outside Japan to register with the IYF. And so his son came here and presented us with our dojo certificate, naming our dojo Shuyokan. Now, kan means house. Shuyo comes from Shugyo, which means strong, austere training or mastery of oneself. So it's the house of mastering oneself. So we have taken that name of Shuyokan and adopted the teaching system that I use, Shuyokan Ryu. And Shuyokan Ryu is based on the martial arts I've trained in, which is Aikido, Judo, Karate, Jiu-Jitsu, and Hawaiian Lua. So we take the techniques and apply them to that. And so students get their Q rankings in Aikido Goshin Jitsu, the self-defense art with the Aikido principles. But when they get their black belts, they get it in Shuyokan Aikido Jutsu.
Interesting. I mentioned earlier, I went to El Camino College in Torrance, and this was in 1985. I just graduated from high school, and still trying to find myself. But just in the curriculum, there's self-defense. That sounds like fun, and it fulfilled a PE requirement, I guess. And the man who was teaching the class was named Mitz Yamashita.
Yes.
Come to find out, he's Yoshinkan black belt. Still around, by the way. I saw him a couple months ago, and still just moves like lightning, and just the nicest man in the world. But do not let him grab your wrist or your fingers or anything else like that. He was and still is very amazing. But he introduced you, right, to Shioda Sensei.
In 1980, when Shioda came here, there was Mitz Yamashita and Sam Combs. They were good friends, and they held their gathering there for Shioda up in Whittier, and that's actually where I met Mitz. And he did a demonstration. He's very powerful and dynamic on the mat, but off the mat he looks very meek. And like you say, you don't want to mess with Mitz.
I want to talk a little bit about Alohe Solomon Kaivalu.
Yes.
Recently, in the last few years, I got a chance to meet Kumo Michelle Manu, and we've become very close friends. And so a lot of my familiarity with the art of Lua has actually come through her, and as my viewers know, she was also on an episode of 52 Masters earlier. How did you meet Alohe Solomon Kaivalu? And how did that journey of Lua begin?
Okay. I first met Alohe and his wife Christine when they had a martial arts school up in, I think it was the San Ann or Tustin. I was looking for martial arts supply stores. And I remember going up to his dojo there, or the store they had, and I got some equipment. And then in 1997, that was in like 1967. Okay, in 1997, our paths crossed. I met him at a World Martial Arts Hall of Fame that we held here in Costa Mesa, and he was there. And then I ended up going to a wedding one of my students had here, and they, ironically enough, set my wife and I at the table with Alohe and Christine. And I looked at Christine, I recognized her because of her hair. And I looked at her and I said, "Didn't you used to own a martial arts school?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "That's where I remember you." So that was in 2000. And then from 2000, I started training with Alohe. What he did for me was he had an organization called World League Martial Arts. And I got a hold of him one day and I said, I need, I'm getting up in years, and I said, I want to be able to have a successor when I'm no longer able to teach. So I said, I'd like to get some type of a written documentation from a group that would designate me or recognize me as the Shodai Sensei, first generation teacher of Shuyokan Ryu. I said, but I don't want to take the title Soke because traditionally that has to be handed down, and I've got nobody to hand that title down to me. So I was having an event in 2000 to celebrate, I think, my 28th year in the martial arts. And he says, well, let me do some research on it. And he says, I'm going to get a hold of Sensei Demura and ask him about the Soke thing. And he says, whatever I do, he says, don't argue with me. Oh, I learned you don't argue with Alohe. So at the party we had honoring my 28th year in martial arts, I think it was, he had a document that he awarded to me designating me as the Shodai Soke, or Soke of Shuyokan Ryu. And that was signed by Richard Ribago, who's no longer with us.
He was my sensei.
James Ebro, Ed Parker's first one of the black belts. Richard Nunes from Lima Lama, Alohe, and David Torres. And he told everybody that Sensei Dye's first teacher was his father, and his father is no longer here. So he said, what I'm going to do is intervene and anoint you with the title of Soke on your dad's behalf. So he gave me the title Soke, and then he also ranked me 10th degree in Shuyokan Ryu. So when I got those certificates, he told the group there, he says, if you ask Sensei Dye is he a Soke, he will say no. So I made it very clear to my students, and I put it on our website, that the 10th degree and the title Soke is an administrative title and rank that I use here at the dojo. That will appear on your documents that I give you, but you call me Sensei. Okay. Soke means founder. It has different meanings and stuff like that, but that's how I got the title Soke, and I got the rank of 10th degree. And because my ranks in the other martial arts, I have a 6th degree in Aikido that was issued by Yasuhisa Shioda, a 6th degree in Lua. Ironically enough, I got those promotions the same year together. And then I have a 5th degree in Judo and Jiu-Jitsu and a 3rd degree in Karate. And so it's a combination of those arts that has made up Shuyokan. We take techniques from those systems and put them together. And this is something I've explored a lot in, and that's the fact that the martial arts, whether they're Japanese, Korean, or Chinese, are not really martial arts. They're teaching systems. You know, in Aikido, they call this kotegaishi. In Jiu-Jitsu, it's called a wrist lock. In Lua, it's called the teeth of the shark, mana, the shark and the bear. So it's the same technique, but taught in different martial arts systems. It has different names. And I've been able to do some research. When Alohe was here, I was training with him. I did a lineage chart, Dai-Thru Aikijitsu, which is the predecessor of Aikido, all the way down to his Lua family. And I've been able to tie the Hawaiian Lua into the Dai-Thru Aikijitsu because of the affiliations of the founder of Karate, Gishin Funakoshi, Judo, Jigoro Kano, Aikido with Alohe, with O-Sensei. And then you have Okazaki Sensei, who trained in Lua and created the Danzan-ryu Jiu-Jitsu. And when he created that Danzan-ryu Jiu-Jitsu, his Lua instructor says, don't call it Lua. Only the people who study Lua will recognize it. So the Lua techniques were introduced there. Well, then you have the breakdown of all the people that came in to there. And then you have the Chahun family with the relation of Alohe. So it's all related and connected.
Interesting.
So that's how I was able to connect that. And it was kind of interesting because Alohe did a video on his techniques with, I think it was Rising Sun Productions. And I watched that video, and he was doing techniques that we do in Aikido, so we kind of had an inside joke. He would tell me, he says, you're doing Lua, and I looked at him, I said, you're doing Aikido. So, but they're very similar in nature, you know, so.
The way you teach and the way you do martial arts is through the lens of the legal system. I mean, you know, we mentioned in class today about what you say, you know, after the fight, right? And how to protect yourself legally. And a lot of martial arts instructors do not know that. They don't teach it, they don't know it. So we kind of know, it's my view that a lot of martial arts instructors teach what happens when, here's the fight, somebody attacks you physically, this is what you do. But many do not talk about before the fight and how to not get into the fight. But you know, a lot of the confrontations can be avoided through awareness and de-escalation and things like that. But most of the martial arts focus on, okay, the fight. But then there's also the aftermath, which very few people talk about also, you know. And a gentleman named Tony Blauer, something I learned from him was there are three enemies. There's yourself, you know, your fears and, you know, things like that limit you. There's the actual opponent, and then there's the legal system. And we have to be able to deal with all three of them.
Right.
So, being a law enforcement officer, how does that shape your view and the way that you teach?
Well, I've got 42 years in law enforcement, 34 with Costa Mesa PD, and 8 years with the Orange County Regional Sheriff's Academy. In my 34 years as a police officer, I used my baton once. I never shot anybody. I never got shot at. I came close to shooting somebody one time, but I didn't. And I used my pepper spray once. So my martial arts training helped me to de-escalate situations. And I'll talk about one of those here in a minute. But I believe that how you train in the dojo or the dojang is how you're going to react on the street. Ironically enough, on the backside of the dojo here, there's an apartment complex, and I responded to a call out there one day where it was involving a husband and wife who had gotten involved in an argument up in Riverside, and the wife came down here to spend time with her mother, and the husband came down here because he had to get the last word in, I guess. Mm-hmm. And when we got the call, they said there's a knife involved. So I walked between the apartment complexes, and there was a convertible car parked there, and the husband was sitting in the driver's seat. The two children were off to the right rear of the car, and the door on the driver's side was open, and the wife was standing there very intent looking on her husband, and when I walked around the side of the door, she had a 12-inch butcher knife in her hand. So I took up a position to the left rear of the car, and I'm thinking, when you have to make a split-second decision, what am I going to do here? Am I going to draw my weapon and shoot? Am I using my baton? Am I using my pepper spray? And I had to think about the repercussions of the family. So what happened was, I'm telling her to drop the knife. I'm waiting for my backup to get there, and she's not listening to what I'm saying. And at some point in time, the husband looked up and says, "Don't do it." Well, she drew her hand back to stab him, and it was that point I lunged, pushed her body up against the steering wheel, and pulled her arm out along the side posts of the car, and made her drop the. I took the knife out of her hand exactly the way I'd been trained to do in the dojo, which I later realized was not safe because it was, the way I was taught. Put the knife on the ground and secured it, and then I handcuffed her and took her to jail. And she told me, "Yeah, I heard you, but I wanted to stab him." And so the funny part about this story is, number one, I learned taking the weapon out of the hand the way I did it traditionally was not safe. So I had to change that in my law enforcement career. But the funny part about this was, when I was taking that knife out of her hand, I did not want to scratch the bright red paint on that car. In another situation that we had a gentleman who lived in a group home, and he didn't want to live, so the report we got, he was standing in the middle of the street wanting to get hit by a car. So I get there, and my backup that's coming worked prior to being a police officer, worked in a mental institution, so he would have had good knowledge there. But when I get there, this gentleman's standing in the middle of the street, no shirt on, he's buffed out, he's got camouflage pants on. And I get out of the unit, and I said, "What's your problem?" He says, "Don't come any closer." He said, "I don't want to live. I want to be here. And I know karate. I only know one move, and I don't want to use it." So I looked at him and I said, "Oh, then you know the code of Bushido, Kukuro Hara Ichiban." He said, "Oh, you study the martial arts?" I said, "Yeah." So I de-escalated the thing here. So I start talking to him, and I said, calm him down, and I said, "We're going to have to take you to a facility and have you evaluated. Are you okay?" "Oh, yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm okay." So the ambulance shows up, and they load him up in the gurney. There's a female attendant and a male attendant. They're loading him in the back of the ambulance, and I said, "Now, don't forget about the code of Bushido." The female attendant says, "Oh, you study the martial arts? So do I." And off to the sunset they went. So, those are the kind of things I was able to use my martial arts training to verbally de-escalate. And I think, if you look at the definition of Aikido, it's to make harmony with nature. The Do is the philosophical side. The Jitsu is the means. So if the Do doesn't work, then you go to the Jitsu. And, as a martial arts instructor, what I teach my students, if they misuse it, I tell them, well, actually, if they use it, I said, if I get subpoenaed into court to testify as your trainer or instructor, I want to testify for you and not against you. Because I've had to go to court before and be sworn as an expert. I had to testify where two of my law enforcement officers used techniques, and we won the case because I said they did exactly what they were trained to do.
What do you think the greatest lesson, or one of the greatest lessons you've learned from martial arts is for yourself?
That's a deep question. I think what the martial arts is, well, first of all, I can tell you what the martial arts, this is how I'll answer this. I've trained with a lot of different masters, senseis, sokis, okay? Alohe, Fumio Demura, Gozo Shioda, a lot of different people. But the best teachers I have ever trained with are my students. I will learn more from them than they'll ever learn from me. And I never know what I'm going to teach when I get here at the dojo. I have to see what the mood is. And I tell my students that once they walk through this door, everything that happens stays outside. Come here, and and then once you leave here, forget what you learned here and go outside. So I'm trying to teach muscle memory, and I've learned a lot from my students because I'll teach a technique, And all of a sudden I'll watch them and I'll say, oh, I can add something to that. Now, I've also learned that there is no perfect martial arts system. If there was, we'd all be studying it.
Mhm.
All the martial arts have something to offer. All the martial arts have weaknesses and strength. Mine are no different. If you look back and think of you and I are the only two people on the face of the earth, and you kick me, you've created a kicking martial art, the perfect martial art, kicking. I take that kick and I add a punch to it. Now I've created an eclectic martial art. So all the martial arts, in my opinion, are all eclectic.
Mm.
We beg, or we borrow and we steal techniques from different martial arts to either enhance our techniques or make them better. I'm not a traditional martial artist. And I had an 8-year-old student tell me, you're a traditional martial artist in what you teach in your system. That's your tradition.
Mm.
So I hope that my legacy will continue, that my students will carry on, what I teach here. I try and use simple terms that people remember, because you only hear 10% of what the person's saying.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you'll hear me say, proper distance equals proper action time. Lack of motion creates resistance. So it's just how I teach.
Mm-hmm.
It's Shuyokan is my teaching system, and the techniques are taken from the martial arts I train in. Awareness is the key factor in all martial arts systems. And we have a saying here that the spirit of the black belt is inherited by the warrior who wears it. So I tell students, once you make black belt, our formal testing here is very formal. Shodan test is the test of endurance. The Nidan test is the test of practicality. And the Sandan test, the students create their own test based on our requirements here. And I never see that test until the day they test. There's no formal testing after third degree. It's based on your continued training and stuff. And I get attached, especially to my younger students. Sensei Smith, who was here today, he's been with me 35 years. But I get the younger generation that come here, and the average time they spend with me is 12 years, because they get older, they go to college, they work and stuff like that. I can't keep them here forever. And I used to go through separation anxiety, just like a parent does when their kids go to college. But then I finally said, okay, they're on a journey with me. The journey might be short, some of the journey might be long. So when that journey comes to an end, then some of them will come back and train, some of them will stay in touch with me, but they are my dojo sons and daughters. And if anything happens to them, it happens with me. But when one of the students leaves me, they take part of me with them, and they always leave part of them with us. And here's something else that's kind of interesting. If you notice here in the dojo, O-sensei's picture is on the west side. That's the shoman. Typically, in a traditional dojo, the shoman is either on the east or the south side. Our shoman here is on the west side. And his face is looking at the mirror, and above the mirror says, Shuyokan is a reflection of your spirit. So it's kind of symbolic that he's watching our students. But the worst person that anybody will face in this dojo is the image they see in the mirror.
Sensei Dye, really appreciate you having me here, allowing me to train in your class, and being part of 52 Masters. What an honor, and continued success.
Yeah, and the mats are always here for you to come back and train.
Thank you. Really appreciate that.
Listen.
So once again, I'm William Christopher Ford. This is 52 Masters, and we'll see you next time.